I'm here with Nick Begich, Congressman Nick Begich. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And so my first question, Senator Murkowski has expressed concern with the layoffs of federal workers in Alaska and across the U.S. As a member of the DOGE caucus, how many Alaskans so far have been caught in this situation, and what would you say to those who have lost their jobs as a result of this?
About 100 people, we've been told, have been impacted by this. These workers primarily were on a probationary period with the federal government. Look, I've told folks here in the interior, and I will continue to tell folks throughout the state, if they have been impacted by these cuts and they have specific information that they can share about their position, its importance to the state, and why they believe they should be reinstated, they should reach out to our office and we'll review those on a case-by-case basis.
You mentioned letting people write to you to tell you what's specific. Before they do so, are there any in your mind already that you know you would fight to protect from this?
I've not received specific details sufficient to provide that information. We've made requests of people and they're providing those details to us now. So once we receive that and have an opportunity to review it, we'll be able to provide a better response on that. One of the things that's important to recognize, though, is the DOGE caucus, Department of Government Efficiency Caucus, is a bipartisan caucus. So there's Republicans, there are Democrats that are involved in this effort. I think what most people recognize is that we have a national debt that's grown to an unmanageable size. We have a national deficit that needs to be reduced, and that needs to become a priority in the Congress. What we're seeing over the last several years is a situation in which, in many cases, the Federal Reserve has stepped in to print money in order to finance the deficit that has been accrued each year. And when that happens, it creates an inflationary environment that actually ends up being a backdoor tax on the rest of the country. And what's unfortunate about an inflationary tax is that it's regressive, so it impacts people that can afford it the least more than anyone else. So it's really important for everyone that we get federal spending under a more sustainable pathway, and the DOGE caucus is an effort to locate fraud, waste, and abuse in government so that we make sure that services are going to people that really need those services.
And so would you call the federal workers, so far the 100 in Alaska who were, would they be categorized as fraud, waste, or abuse?
Well, I think what we're looking for is efficiency opportunities, and if these folks, as I've mentioned, will reach out to our office and provide additional details, we would be happy to take a look at that. I think it's important that we balance what we're paying for government and what we're getting out of government, and there has to be a balance. A number of these folks were hired under the previous administration, and federal workforce exploded under the Joe Biden presidency, and it reached what many believe is an unsustainable level, and we need to review that now to make sure that the people that have been hired on, we can afford to pay.
What needs to be done to improve aviation safety in the state of Alaska?
That's a great question, and I've spoken personally with Secretary Duffy about this. Secretary Duffy is the new Transportation Secretary for the United States. We were speaking specifically about the tragedy that unfolded outside of Nome on that Unilacleet flight. And what we recognize already is that a number of the cameras that we rely on in remote locations to check weather are down. More than a third of those cameras are actually offline right now. And we need redundancy in power systems, redundancy in connectivity, and redundancy in the cameras themselves in order to reduce the likelihood that they go down. When a pilot flying to a remote area of Alaska isn't certain about the weather, they're taking undue risks. And so that's something that can be improved relatively quickly. We received commitments from the Secretary that he will invest in aviation safety in Alaska and recognizes that Alaska is unique. I have to remind people in Congress that we're the only state in the country you have to fly through another country to get to. So we are sort of an island in and of ourselves. We're vast, we're sparsely populated, and we need to make sure we're putting investments in the ground, in hard infrastructure and staffing in Alaska specifically to make sure that we have safe air transportation for the public.
Do you support the renaming of Denali back to Mount McKinley by President Trump?
You know, I've always called the mountain Denali, and I'm going to continue to call it Denali. I know people called it Denali before it had an official name with the government. I understand that Senator Murkowski has introduced a bill in the Senate, and of course this is going to have to reach a veto-proof majority in the Senate in order to be signed into law. There are a number of priorities that I'm working on right now that are focused on improving the lives of everyday Alaskans and opening up our state to responsible resource development, and that's going to be my focus over the next several months.
If it comes to a vote, would you vote in favor of Murkowski's measure?
Well, it would have to be brought up in the House in order for us to take a vote on it. You know, I want to make sure that whatever happens, it's going to be successful, actually successfully signed into law. I think there are so many things that we need to work on in the nation right now, and you know, how we choose to name a mountain is probably not the most important priority for most Alaskans.
And what are your thoughts in general on Donald Trump's first month as president?
Well, it's certainly been aggressive. He has come in with a clear agenda. They are looking for ways to trim government spending, but also to open up American energy resources for so much of the nation. You know, Alaska is the centerpiece to the strategy of bringing supply chains back to domestic locations. We have the energy, we have the critical minerals, we have the base metals, we have the timber, we have the assets that the rest of the nation is going to rely on to start those supply chains in the United States. And so I've been very encouraged with what President Trump has done with respect to Alaska's ability to produce through his executive order and his public statements and his work with the nation of Japan, talking about the gas line potential there. So there are a lot of things that Alaskans have to be excited about right now, and should be excited about, because we're on the map again and have the opportunity, hopefully, to unlock so much of Alaska's potential.
And how have you felt about your first month and a half on the job? What are your priorities going forward?
So we were the first office to pass a bill in the House, and we were actually passed two bills. These were bills that were introduced by my predecessor, Congresswoman Mary Peltola. They passed out of the House Natural Resources Committee. We were able to pick those bills back up, introduce them day one, which I did, and we were able to get them through in the first month. And now they go over to the Senate where they can be considered, and hopefully they'll be passed. So I felt good about the camaraderie that we've seen within the Republican conference. I think there's a lot of optimism about what we can do for the American people and make sure government is working for them again. And that's our focus. I'm encouraged by it, and I hope to see us deliver on those promises over the next several months and really 2 years.
What are your thoughts on Elon Musk, his current position, and being an unelected civilian, the amount of power he currently holds in the administration?
Well, you know, Elon Musk has been brought in as an efficiency expert, and the truth of the matter is, we look at what Elon Musk has achieved at PayPal. He changed the payments industry. At Tesla, he changed the auto industry. With SpaceX, he changed the space industry and dramatically reduced the cost of payload per kilogram to orbit, right? So he has the ability to come in. He came in with X and was able to drive tremendous efficiencies on that social media platform. So he has an ability to come in, recognize efficiency opportunities, recognize when money is not being spent in the best possible way, and adjust those organizations to be more service-oriented and responsive. And so I'm encouraged that he's there. I think that we need to make sure that the things that his team is recommending are, of course, reviewed by experts in the administration. I think it makes sense, and that's what we've been assured is happening, even most recently with a statement from the administration that came out yesterday on that topic. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I think we all recognize we have got to cut the size of government. It's necessary. We're at 120 to 125% debt to GDP ratio. Most economists will tell you that 100 to 110% becomes almost unmanageable, that you can't really get out of this debt spiral that occurs. We've got to do everything we can to get out of that debt spiral. We are at a higher debt level today than we were at the end of World War II. And that is irresponsible. And if we're going to have this nation remain on a good quality path for the next generation, we've got to make sure that government spending gets under control.
Last night you held an open house at your Fairbanks office. What kind of feedback did you receive from the community, both positive, negative? What was sort of the breadth of that?
Well, it was both positive and there was some constructive criticism. And some of that constructive criticism was really related to the concerns that people have about the authority of the executive branch and whether or not the Trump administration has exceeded that authority, what the recourse, if they have exceeded that authority, would be. Obviously, there's concerns around the degree to which Alaska relies on federal funding and whether or not we would bear the brunt of a lot of these cuts that could be forthcoming. I'm doing everything that I can do to defend Alaska's position in the House, and I know that the senators will do the same in the Senate. And I've told folks, and I told folks here today at this chamber event, if there are specific programs that people are concerned about might be affected by some of these actions that are happening right now, reach out to our office, give us some background information, tell us why the program that is being brought to us is important, why it's mission critical, so we can go to the appropriate department heads and have those discussions at a deeper level.
You mentioned those concerns that you received that the executive branch is exceeding its authority. What are your own thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need to see where the courts land on these things. I mean, you're seeing certain circuit courts finding with the administration. You're seeing other justices not finding with the administration. I think ultimately this is going to be decided by our nation's most prominent legal experts, the Supreme Court. They're going to be the ones who have that responsibility. They know where those boundary conditions lie, and they're going to have to make that determination. No different than those determinations have been made under the Biden administration, under the Obama administration, and every presidential administration that preceded them. This is a part of the process.
And my last question, you'd mentioned the bipartisan nature of the Doge Caucus. Is there a list available somewhere online of its various members? How many are Democrats? How many are Republicans? How many people are
It's a great question. I don't have an answer for you about whether that list is available online. We'll have to get back to you on that.
Perfect. Yeah. That's all the questions I have. Thank you so much for coming by.
You bet. Yeah, appreciate it.